Welcome back. Footage of the Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer, which crashed in Kazakhstan, indicates that the rear of the fuselage of the aircraft may have been struck by shrapnel from a missile or from anti-aircraft guns. The footage appears to contradict reports that the plane seemed to lose control post a bird strike. According to the latest reports, 38 people have lost their lives, 29 people have survived. So was this Azerbaijan Airlines aircraft shot down? Well, first up, what you're now seeing is footage of the remains of the Embraer E190, which crashed in the city of Aktau in Kazakhstan. And there appears to be shrapnel marks on the fuselage of the aircraft. So let's just move to the next image where we can actually show you some of the shrapnel marks that we are actually talking about. This is shrapnel that you can actually see. It seems to be either anti-aircraft bullets or possibly the warhead of a surface-to-air missile potentially, or another missile, and fragments from that which have created these rather distinctive marks, shrapnel on the fuselage. Now, how do we know that? Let's give you an easy explainer. Compare a still of what you see over there with another image of another previous incident, entirely unrelated. But you can see over here what shrapnel looks like when it damages an aircraft. It tears through the thin skin of an aircraft quite easily. It punctures through, and you can see it is dotted throughout. And it's similar over here. In fact, what we are showing you over here is just a small part of the shrapnel which has damaged the fuselage and other surfaces of the Azerbaijan airliner. But let's move on to the next point, because what we'll now show you is a still from inside the aircraft which shows a part of the wing fairing missing. It's damaged, it's broken, or it may have been shot through, presumably. That's what's taken place over here. There's this huge hole over here. How exactly did that take place? Was that penetrated as well? And we can now show you an image of the cabin and a part of the cabin. And again, the skin of an aircraft is very thin, but this is video, a part of a still from a video taken by a passenger. And in fact, there are multiple perforations which can be seen. This is one that we've circled over here. There are others as well, the video unclear, but this seems to be an area where shrapnel went through, and apparently, according to some reports, it went through and pierced and came out the other end in some places, which begs the question, what exactly happened to this ultra-modern E-series airliner made by the Brazilian company Embraer? Was it a bird hit, as was reported earlier? The evidence that exists doesn't seem to suggest that at all. What we do know is, and let's just have that up for you. Now, this is important. We'll stay with this for just a moment. What we do know is that the pilots were struggling to control the aircraft. Now, this is the speed of an aircraft, and this is the altitude of the aircraft. Typically, this is from Flight Radar 24, an aircraft climbs, and then it continues at a level altitude, right? And then it starts descending as it approaches to land, or if there is a correction. It's absolutely rock steady. But let's keep moving. And now what you'll see is that it descends sharply. And what you see here is, per Flight Radar, the last 74 minutes of the flight, where the pilot is struggling to maintain both speed and altitude, right? Both speed and altitude, he is struggling to maintain, or they are struggling to maintain over here, a rail fight. So what happened which provoked this incident? What we do know, as I mentioned, that based on this, the vertical speed of the aircraft oscillated between minus 8,300 feet per minute to plus 8,300 feet per minute, more than 100 times in the last 74 minutes. This data comes from Flight Radar 24. The aircraft was on a scheduled flight from Baku, Azerbaijan to Grozny when something catastrophic happened which resulted in this crash. The aircraft made impact at a little under 400 kilometers per hour. It eventually flew to Aktau. It appears the pilots were trying to land, but very, very tragic what has happened, and so many have lost their lives. So the big question, the Azerbaijan airliner, was it shot down? I'm now joined by Matthew Bori, a Chief Intelligence Officer and co-founder at Osprey Flight Solutions. Captain Amit Singh and Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar are with us. Thank you all very much Matthew Bori, let me come to you first. Is there a sense that the signs that we have now got with us are consistent with shrapnel damage?
Yes, Osprey Flight Solutions assesses that the most likely scenario at this point, based on the evidence that's available, is that this aircraft was in fact misidentified as a Ukrainian drone and shot down by a Russian surface-to-air missile system. All of this evidence is linked to the fact that during the time when this aircraft was coming into Grozny in Russia, where it was destined from Baku, Russia was defending against Ukrainian drone attacks and employing air defenses to do so. Russian authorities have publicly stated that they were defending against a Russian drone attack. And so when you combine the fact that there was air defense activity going on in the vicinity of where this aircraft was flying, and then the damage that is visibly sustained from the footage of not only the wreckage of the craft, but the interior of the fuselage, which you so graciously pointed out, point towards some form of external explosion causing shrapnel to come through the skin of the aircraft, damage flight controls in the rear of the aircraft, and then unfortunately leading to the catastrophic event and the crash of the aircraft, again, caused by a misidentification from a Russian surface-to-air missile. This has been stated in two different international media outlet reports citing Azeri officials, unnamed at present, and Azeri local media has also cited Azeri officials as this being the cause of the crash, though no government has officially stated it as of yet.
Captain Amit Singh, in a situation like this where there is significant shrapnel damage, presumably the hydraulic systems on board may have been impacted. Controlling the aircraft may only have been possible in terms of gaining or reducing altitude by using the engines available, reducing and increasing thrust. Could you as a pilot explain to us how difficult or challenging the situation would have been for the flight crew?
It is extremely difficult, and the probability of landing the aircraft safely is reduced because your vertical control, which is carried out by the horizontal stabilizer and the elevator, which we normally use, we pull the stick and the aircraft nose goes up, which means at the rearmost end, there is a control surface which acts, and it is kind of a leverage mechanism. You act on one side and it reacts on the other side. So that part of the control was lost, most probably, in all probability, as we see the projectile shrapnel holes. So there was a loss of hydraulic or any sort of control which leads to the elevator and stabilizer. So the only way we can control is by the movement of the engines. Increased thrust basically affects the nose going up, reducing, puts the nose down. And that is the only way to control the aircraft in this situation. It has been done before successfully. DHL A300 was shot in Iraq while taking off, and they lost all hydraulics. The left engine and the wing was on fire. There was a fuel leak. So they had effectively only one engine and no control surfaces. They managed to come back and land in Iraq safely. After landing, of course, they went off the runway. But here, the situation was pretty different because they had to fly a long way from Grozny, more than an hour in this situation, flying in a phugoid motion, going up and down. As you increase thrusts, the nose goes up. As the nose goes up, the speed comes down. You then again reduce. So you're typically fighting with the controls and constantly struggling, tiring yourself, and the crew gets tired. And when it eventually comes to the situation of landing, if you're in the correct phase of the phugoid, means you are descending, but not too fast, it would have been a very successful mission. But unfortunately, the last few seconds, the aircraft banked and kind of hit on the right side, increasing the casualties and the possibility of a safe outcome.
Okay.
Even though a number of survivors, it was 35 or more, it is considered a very good.
Sure. I just wanted to go across to Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar. Captain Bhatnagar, in a situation like this, realistically, once the hydraulic systems or the control surfaces were shot up, realistically the chances of survival for everyone on board would have essentially been non-existent, right? I mean, whoever survived that, it is fairly miraculous.
Absolutely, Vishnu. What is quite evident, and everybody has already shown that the flight controls are totally lost, and primarily maybe due to the hydraulic systems. Embraer is a fly-by-wire system, and hydraulics together with maybe the burning of the cables, and it's a pretty good system of 3 independent hydraulic systems the Embraer has got, and they're called electro-hydraulically. You have a hydraulic pump which is driven by the engine. Plus, you have a backup on electrical pump also, right? But the thing is, if the fluid, if there is a rupture in the hydraulic pipelines and there is no fluid left in any of the systems, then, or if the cables or the wires are burnt, then you cannot actually control. The control surfaces are totally, you cannot control them. So what happened is it because of the shrapnel, which is very evident now, what it says because of the anti-missile defense system of Russia, and what they earlier brought out because of the war going on between Ukraine and Russia. The northern Caspian Sea, Russia is using this as a launching platform for their strategic bomber. So we experienced that there was a GPS jamming also. Nobody knew what exactly happened. And when the flight radar 24 data came up again, then the aircraft was already in a nose down and trying to control the aircraft, the pilots. And what Captain Amit said is absolutely correct because of the thrust, and you have to keep matching and reducing the thrust, and you have to maintain the flight level or the level flight. Similarly, this similar accident happened in '89 that was United Airlines Flight 232, where the DC-10 aircraft, the tail-mounted engine, the fan rotor blades, they just exploded.
Yep.
And because the shrapnels and the engines, they penetrated the horizontal and the vertical stabilizer. And they lost all the hydraulic control. There, the one instructor was there who came inside the flight deck, and he was only handling the throttles.
No, I understand. So, Captain Bhatnagar, because I'm running short on time, I wanted to go back to Matthew Bori. Matthew, are we aware of the hostilities in and around the Grozny area, in and around Chechnya presently, which may have potentially resulted in a missile being fired at this aircraft?
On the morning of the 25th of December, a security official in Chechnya issued a statement saying that drones had been shot down that morning over Chechnya. The governor of North Ossetia, which is in the North Caucasus Federal District, where Chechnya is also located, said that the region was under a Ukrainian drone attack and that drones had been downed over Vladikavkaz, which is located to the west of Grozny. And on 3 different occasions since late November, prior to the 25th of December, Ukrainian drone attacks on the North Caucasus region occurred with air defenses activated in response. Since September of 2022, Russia's accused Ukraine of launching over 200 separate drone attacks deep into its territory, over 300 kilometers from the border. So this type of activity is well known inside of Russia that it's occurring. Russia typically will introduce what is called a carpet plan, where they will close airports in and around where this activity is taking place from the drone attacks and the air defense. It happened even in Moscow earlier today. The carpet plan was introduced because of potential drone threat. The bottom line is they didn't take action to close Grozny Airport during this incident. And unfortunately, the air defense activity and the Ukrainian drone attack occurred simultaneously as this aircraft was in a similar area. This is not a new phenomenon, unfortunately. It is a tragedy in aviation. But in 2001, Ukraine shot down a Siberian Airlines flight over the Black Sea in a misidentification during a military exercise. MH17 was shot down over eastern Ukraine in July of 2014 by pro-Russian militia forces in another misidentification event. And in January of 2020, a Ukrainian International Airlines flight was shot down over Tehran shortly after takeoff in another case of misidentification. All of these incidents highlight why governments, airlines, insurance companies, and the industry as a whole need to work together to better identify mechanisms for sharing information and adjusting flight routes in and around conflict zones.
Well, we leave it over there. Very, very tragic indeed. But it does appear now what the cause of the crash does now appear to be increasingly clear. Thank you all very much for being with us.